Heroes. We recognize their names, faces, skill, and courage.
But some heroes are not famous. They are part of the fabric of our lives, inspiring and helping others every day.
They lead by example.
These are the heroes that show us the way. They lead by example in our lives every day.
Hi, I'm Nate Howard, your host for this program. We are going to introduce you to some of the unsung heroes of our state. People who shun the spotlight but are making a difference, building on their own success to ensure others succeed as well. They have faced their own challenges and now lead by example. In this episode of Lead by Example, we will meet a special couple who started out with little more than a dream and a few historical wax figures, but have since touched millions of lives and helped transform a community.
My husband Elmer preached that community development and cultural development go hand in hand. That was his mantra.
The story begins with a Southern girl and her Midwestern sweetheart. When Joanne met her future husband Elmer at university in Atlanta, she was introduced to a new world of activism and Black consciousness.
Coming from a small town in Florida, where when people talked about the system, they were talking about septic tanks, and so to be in the center of these very invigorating conversations and looking at Muhammad Ali's political impact or looking at things in a very different way from things that would have been of no import to me, no importance whatsoever. We used to ride the buses of Atlanta almost everywhere. And when we were going through the exclusive neighborhoods of Atlanta, my eyes were focused out of the window, looking at the homes and the lawns and the cars and pointing out to Elmer all of those things. When we drove through the poorer neighborhoods of Atlanta, it was almost as if a curtain came down over my eyes, so that it wasn't even insensitivity as much as inability to see. And Elmer would gently lean over and say, "Joe, look at that man eating out of the garbage can." Or, "Joe, those men are sitting on the corner now playing checkers. When you come back, they're going to be still here probably and will have spent their day that way." And slowly I began to see that other self, really, because this was an awakening for me as to who I was and who I was becoming. When I think about how Great Blacks in Wax eventually came to be, and the fact that we had to give up money that we were saving to make a down payment on a house, had to make any number of sacrifices. That girl who met Elmer, who was looking at the big house and the big car, would not have been willing to give up that big house or that big car. That girl who is in a community fighting to bring dignity and revitalization to a community would have seen what was out the window as an interference in all of that. And so there likely would not have been a Great Blacks in Wax Museum, and there likely would not have been an Elmer Martin and a Joanne Martin. And I think that for me, that would have been the greatest loss in my life, not to have met Elmer and been challenged, stimulated, loved by him.
Just 6 months after opening their first storefront museum, the Martins ran out of money. Joanne and Elmer had to sacrifice even further to lead their vision forward.
The time for us to pay our December rent was approaching, and we didn't have any more money. And I could see, one morning I got up and I could see that Elmer was really finally admitting that he was worried too. But I saw him very deliberately walking around our house with this paper sack, some kind of bag, just picking up things, picking up our wedding gifts. And finally he said, "Come with me." And I didn't ask. I got in the car and we drove off to a very interesting neighborhood. And I looked and I realized that he was going into a pawn shop. And he came back a few minutes later and he said they're not interested in any of these things. They said that the thing that sells for them are guns and rings. And when he said that, it kind of went past me for a minute, but the words kind of hung on the word ring. And then finally it hit me, but I saw such a pained look on his face. And that just broke my heart, because I knew that on the one hand, he was saying, I need you to give up this ring, this symbol of my love for you, this part of the sacrifice. And at the same time, I knew that he was saying, this is killing me to ask you this. And so I didn't want him to feel that kind of pain. And I'm, oh, okay, and I'm pulling off the ring and it doesn't want to come off. And I'm saying, look, we have to do what we have to do. He came home a few days later and he had a calendar that he put on the wall, and every morning, first thing before he did anything else, he would mark a day off on that calendar. And one day I was at work at Coppin, and he walked in, and my students, I worked in this big open space, and my students were looking at this very tall man coming into the lab and walking very deliberately toward me, and they were just engrossed on what was going on. He walked deliberately up to me. I was standing. He took my finger, put the ring back on it, kissed it, and said, and don't you ever take this ring off again. I can't think of anything that we did that either of us would ever have done differently. We gave so much of who we are and who we were to this institution, and that we understood that it was never about us, that there was something much, much bigger than Joanne and Elmer Martin in making this important, and that I owed it to Elmer, considering all of the sacrifices that he made, that he lived and died for this museum. I know that he would look around, and the fact that we finally managed to acquire the properties in the 1600 block would be very, very important to him. I think when he looked at children who started working in this museum when they were 8, 9 years old, and seeing them, the young men and young women that they are now, and that how proud he would be of them. So all of those things come together for me, and the idea that we have been able to build something, maintain it even in the midst of enormous struggle, and that we're moving forward, and that we have made our mark on the museum industry, on community development, all of those things, and that's who Elmer was. He was always someone who cared about people, about culture, about respect and dignity of self, and the idea that we play a small part in trying to carry that out in his name.
The late Dr. Elmer Martin, judging from his own poetry, would certainly agree.
A message from the ancestors. Remember, we did not struggle to keep our minds from being shackled, only to have you turn away from learning in the wise ways of the elders. We did not endure bondage for you to become a slave to drugs and alcohol. We did not die by the millions for you to kill one another by the thousands. We did not ward off their insults and claims of our inferiority for you to hate yourself. We did not become their human commodity, their black ivory, their black gold, for you to put material things over your people, even your own families and children. We withstood their slaughterhouse slave ships, their seasoning and breaking, for you to walk in unity and live with dignity.